Hey, how's it going guys, Kris here, and well, it's time to kick off a brand new set of weapon guides for yet another game. That game being Battlefield 5. And why not start off with one of the guns you get right at the very beginning. This guide's going to be giving you the complete lowdown on the Sturmgewehr 1.5, an automatic rifle for the assault class, which is a good gun to introduce you to the assault's aggressive role in the game. A pretty nice choice if you consider yourself to be a bit of a run and gunner. So the Sturmgewehr 1.5, which is actually the Gustav Volkssturmgewehr, was in fact a semi-automatic rifle created by the Nazis to essentially arm civilians with during the latter stages of the war. The gun was chambered to fire the 7.92 by 33mm Kurz round, which just so happens to be the same bullet that the STG-44 fired, and it also shared the same 30-round box magazine too. Although it was originally designed to fire in semi-auto, which can also be seen in Battlefield 5 as the assault's level 10 gun, there were also a few prototype variants modified for selective fire, made in very limited quantities, which is basically the Sturmgewehr 1.5 in the game. The weapons themselves were pretty shoddy looking things that were crudely assembled, because let's just say that in 1945 resources were running a bit short, and the Nazis just simply weren't capable of producing and manufacturing high-end weaponry to arm their followers with, these followers being the Volkssturm, who were essentially a load of brainwashed German civilians propelled by the Nazi regime and their propaganda. So along came the Volkssturmgewehr, basically a rifle made especially for the Volkssturm, assembled using bits and pieces of cheap materials, and desperately rushed out of the door, with little time to perfect them. So much so that there were quite a few different versions developed by different manufacturers, yet they all just went by the same bog standard name. Because the weapons were so badly made and hurried into the hands of the Volkssturm, this meant that the rifles were a bit crap when it came to their performance, being difficult to aim accurately and operate, due to the poor workmanship and rushed design. They did the job to a somewhat acceptable standard, but they didn't exactly do it very well, which would have made them even less ideal for their purpose, being designed to be used by a bunch of civilians with barely any training or military knowledge. So basically real life noobs, who probably would have been cannon fodder for the Red Army, as they made their way through Berlin. The select fire models of the Sturmgewehr would have been few and far between, because the full auto concept of the rifle was basically rejected. But that's not to say that a few prototype models wouldn't have existed, as the idea was definitely considered. Now let's take a look at those stats and see exactly how the Sturmgewehr matches up with some of the other weapons in the game. Damage-wise, the gun deals a maximum of 25 up to the range of 10 meters, allowing it to kill in just 4 bullets to the body within close quarters. After 10 meters though, damage is going to drop off and gradually slope down over distance, eventually reaching the weapon's minimum damage of 17 at 75 meters and beyond. This basically means that, as the gun's bullets travel further over distance, less damage is going to be dealt, to the point where it can take up to 6 shots to drop another player further away. Planting a headshot is going to double the damage, and crank it up to as high as 50 in CQC. So if you land 2 shots in your opponent's head within those closer ranges, then that's all you're going to need to take them out of the fight. But as far as damage goes, these are generally the same sort of figures to a lot of the other fully automatic rifles in the assault class, like the STG-44. Though interestingly enough, the select fire version of the Sturmgewehr 1.5 is actually a tad weaker than its semi-automatic counterpart, which is capable of killing in less bullets, especially within close to medium ranges, where it dishes out much higher amounts of damage. Though something that's going to ramp up the weapon's lethality and make it a pretty deadly thing to wield is the gun's fully automatic capability, allowing it to fire at the speed of 670 RPM, which as far as the assault rifles go, is definitely on the quicker side. This gives it a slight edge over the STG-44 amongst other similar weapons, and well, let's just say that the Sturmgewehr doesn't really have any issues when it comes to putting players down, providing your shots land on target of course. It's not quite as punishing as the likes of the M1907 SF, with it shooting faster than the Sturmgewehr by a fair bit, but the combination of a decent damage output and a reasonably quick fire rate will allow you to come out on top and give you an advantage in a lot of close to mid-range gunfights. So the Sturmgewehr 1.5 might be a pretty dangerous bit of kit, but squeezing its rusty trigger is going to cause the gun to whip around in a fairly erratic way. With a vertical recoil value of 0.75, this is going to force the barrel to drift upwards quite a lot with prolonged fire. And because it's got its horizontal recoil value set at 0.275, this also makes the base model of the gun without specializations applied fairly inaccurate when compared to a lot of the other assault rifles. These pretty high figures probably won't create too many problems within those shorter proximities, where the Sturmgewehr can often perform at its best. But if you're engaging an enemy beyond close range, then you'll probably need to tap and burst fire the gun to control that recoil and keep its kick down, as firing in full auto is usually going to cause more shots to fly off target, ultimately reducing kill times in the process, which is never a good thing. These recoil values can be lowered however by applying specializations, with the ported barrel reducing horizontal recoil down to a value of 0.22, and that recoil buffer lowering that upwards kick to a new value of 0.58, which is actually lower than the STG-44's base model. Plus there's also a few other specializations to help lower spread and increase accuracy even further too, which are going to improve the Sturmgewehr's performance and therefore allow you to land more shots easily. Using the ported barrel and recoil buffer is going to put the gun's recoil on a more similar level to a few of the other assault rifles. Though with the weapon firing at a fairly quick pace, you're still going to be better off bursting it when dealing with targets further away regardless, as it's still not exactly a very precise gun to use in full auto, even with those specializations slapped onto it. The Sturmgewehr's got a muzzle velocity of 620 meters per second, matching up with the STG-44, so it's slightly quicker than the Ribberalls along with the M1907 SF, which is even lower still. So although the gun is designed for closer ranged engagements, it's still got a fairly decent bullet speed nevertheless. This is going to help you land shots on target beyond close quarters, with bullets reaching their destination a tad quicker than a few of the other weapons in the same class. It's not quite as fast as most of the semi-automatics, but it's definitely not bad at all for an assault rifle, which should help you out quite nicely over those early mid-ranges. When it comes to reliability, the Sturmgewehr 1.5 isn't really all that bad. It uses detachable box magazines holding 30 rounds each, which in most situations is usually enough to do what you need it to do. You'll be given 3 magazines upon spawning, 4 at full capacity, and you'll be capable of taking out a few players per reload. And providing you don't get caught out in the open, you shouldn't really need to worry too much about those reloads getting in the way. Though I guess with the weapon firing so fast and being fairly inaccurate over distance, more bullets are likely to stray off target, which could ultimately lead to more reloading, another reason why the gun might be better suited for closer ranges. But when you do need to switch those mags over, it's only going to take about 2.3 seconds to perform a tactical reload when you've got a bullet left over in the chamber, which is actually pretty fast as far as the assault rifles go, also being quicker than its semi-automatic counterpart too. This can be reduced even further, down to 1.95 seconds using the quick reload specialization, so the same sort of speed as the Ribberalls 1918, which might be handy if you have a bit of a habit of reloading after every kill. Though this specialization will probably be more useful in affecting the gun's empty reloads, which are going to involve longer animations. If you empty the magazine completely, a full reload is going to cost you a longer time of 3.5 seconds, which is a fairly similar sort of time to the Gewehr 1.5. Kinda the opposite of its tactical reloads, with the empty one being on the slower side, which could definitely be a problem should you get yourself surrounded. Though with the quick reload specialization, this will be dropped down to 2.97 seconds, putting it more in line with the Ribberalls and making it slightly quicker to reload than the STG-44. Now taking a look at these Sturmgewehr's specializations, the first 2 choices you'll be met with are quick reload and quick aim, both of which are going to affect the gun's reliability and make you less vulnerable in certain situations. Because the gun's already got fairly nippy tactical reloads, and with it having a decent mag size, you're probably not going to get caught out too often with an empty gun. For this reason, I'd probably opt for the quick aim specialization out of these 2, as it's going to help cut down time when aiming down sights, which can be really useful for getting on target quicker in a close to mid-range gunfight, often giving you a slight advantage. As for the middle section, running down the right side of the tree is going to give you the ported barrel and custom stock options, basically giving you less horizontal recoil along with better accuracy whilst aiming and moving. The left side of the tree, on the other hand, has the enhanced grips and polished action specializations, which are both basically going to reduce hipfire spread and generally make it a lot better. I prefer to run down the right side of the tree, as although improved hipfire can be very beneficial in CQC, which is where the gun can often perform at its best, because the Sturmgewehr suffers with a fairly high recoil pattern, I'd rather try and counter this by making its aimed fire better, which is also going to complement the quick aim option nicely if you choose that specialization as well. For the same reason as this, I also normally choose the recoil buffer last, to reduce vertical recoil as opposed to equipping a lightened stock, which basically allows you to move around 60% faster in ADS. The lightened stock might be beneficial in closer ranges, but because the Sturmgewehr lacks usability over longer distances, the recoil buffer is going to make it feel more controllable and easier to use against opponents over those mid-ranges. And all of these specializations combined together are going to help to counter the weapon's main weaknesses, allowing it to perform a bit better further away, perhaps meaning you can fire in longer bursts, or while being more accurate, while aiming down sights too. So anyway, in conclusion, the Sturmgewehr 1.5 is a perfect starting weapon for the assault class that can often outshine a few of the others in terms of its lethality and reliability, despite being the vanilla gun that'll probably get left on the shelf as people start to unlock more things to play around with. It's a pretty good weapon to highlight what the assault class was designed for, playing with an aggressive mindset and taking the enemy head on, as that quicker than average rate of fire combined with its reasonable damage output gives the weapon some nice stopping power, when you can get those bullets to land on target of course. This is something that the Sturmgewehr has a little bit more trouble with, because its recoil pattern causes it to kick around quite a bit, due to having some fairly high vertical and horizontal figures, reducing its accuracy and stability over a lot of the other weapons. Not to mention the fact that its faster than average fire rate is going to affect this recoil, often making it a bit harder to control too in fully automatic fire. The gun's recoil can be improved with specializations, but it's still going to perform best within those shorter sightlines in CQC and over those early mid ranges, as you'll be able to land more shots on target easier here, and deal more damage too, resulting in far quicker kill times. You can still do reasonably well against opponents further away, providing you tap and burst fire the weapon to keep it under control, as it's got a fairly high muzzle velocity for an assault rifle, which might make it seem a tad easier to use over mid-range than a few of the other guns, especially if you slapped on some mid-range optics to get a better view of your target. Though usually in the Sturmgewehr's case, the closer the better, as you can fully utilise that full auto fire and take advantage of its better factors. Something that's going to help you out within those close to mid ranges is the fact that the gun can be quite dependable, in the sense that you're normally going to have plenty of ammo to get the job done, along with some pretty snappy tactical reloads too, for good measure, both of which are going to complement the gun's close ranged effectiveness and allow you to use it more comfortably here, without being left in as many awkward situations. And overall, the Sturmgewehr 1.5 will be a fairly good choice for both new players and veterans alike, as so long as you get to grips with its recoil, the gun can provide you with plenty of power and consistency, making it an ideal choice for offensive play as you rush towards the objective, taking on anybody you come across as you do. So that's just about it for this one folks. Hope you enjoyed the guide and maybe learned a thing or two. If you did, make sure you hit that like button on the way out, and that'll be greatly appreciated. And of course, subscribe for more Battlefield weapon guides and videos coming very soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in that next episode.